Okay, so we know Las Vegas and other tourist attractions in the United States. They're missing the Canadians, whether they like to admit it or not. And it's not us specifically, it's just our money. But have you ever wondered where our money actually goes when we spend it down there? I mean, sure, yeah, the restaurants, the hotels, the events, those businesses themselves are not getting our money. But it's not just the businesses that it's hurting, it's the state and the city as well. Every hotel room you book, some of the states, they get money from it as well. Then there's also sales tax from restaurants, bars, souvenir shops, grocery stores. And then you got car rental tax and alcohol tax as well. I'm sure there's more, but I'm not the expert in this part. Which is why we're gonna have another Wayne Explains video. Now, if you're new to my channel and you don't know who Wayne Smith is, he's a professor at the Toronto Metropolitan University in the Hospitality and Tourism Management Department, and also a great friend of the channel as well. You may have seen him on CBC or CTV or any of the Canadian news network. If I recall, I think he said he did over 1,000 interviews last year. So I'm gonna hand it over to Wayne Smith now, and he's gonna help us to explain the tourism tax and where our tax dollars are no longer going.
Welcome to another Wayne Explains. Today we're going to be talking about Nevada, and we're going to be talking about the fiscal paradox that's going on in Nevada. When we start talking about hotel tax, all these tourism-related taxes, how do they affect a place like Nevada? And I thought this would be an interesting case study to show you how important tourism is to these economies. So to understand Nevada's model, you have to think of it as an economy that export taxes its government services. So because they don't have individual and corporate income tax, what they have to do to raise tax revenues is they have to take consumption taxes, so export taxes, so money from people who are outside of Nevada, they come into Nevada, they'll game, they'll lodge, they'll do, and that becomes a big part of the tax burden for and how they generate money for the state. So basically how it works is they have over 40 million visitors arrive in Nevada annually. They bring their money earned in other states and countries, and they bring it in directly into Nevada's borders. They then look at targeted extraction. The state levies big taxes on transactions locals rarely make. So hotel rooms, casino bettings, strip car rentals, stadium entertainment events, all these types of things that aren't necessarily day-to-day. They then use that revenue to do capital funds public services, things like schools, roads, emergency responders. And this allows the local resident income taxes to stay at zero. It's really kind of an interesting thing because is this really a sustainable way of working? So when it's going good, because you had the recovery boom after COVID, they had 1.8. So they're, in terms of tourism revenue, they had 1.8 billion and then they had a huge year of $2 billion, and they had things like the Super Bowl there, they had the F1 Grand Prix, they had WrestleMania. There was lots of stuff going on in there. But last year, we then see, there's an economic cool down of 1.85 billion. So what starts then happening to the overall taxation and the tax levels and what services can be provided when the visitors aren't coming and they're not spending the same amount? So just to give you a sense, K through 12 education is partially covered. So I'll talk a little bit about how much is covered in a minute, but they're covering education, they're covering transportation, they're covering municipal services, are all partially covered by tourism taxes. All right. The only thing that's fully covered by all tourism taxes is promotion and marketing. So the Las Vegas Convention and Visitor Authority, which is the biggest one in the United States. Well, depends if you argue if you're from Orlando or not, but one of the two biggest in the country. They have a large budget and they do a lot of promotion around the world, and that's covered through the tourism taxes as well. All right. However, when we start to look at services that are basically 39% of K through 12 education from the tourism taxes. So if you took sort of every tourism dollar, tax dollar, 40 cents of that is going to fund education, 35 cents is going to fund the promotion, and 25 cents is going to the municipal funds, the general funds. So it's really kind of an interesting place to be and see as a result. However, there's a cost when that all works great when tourism is going well, but when tourism is not going well, we see a little bit of difference. So for example, in May 2025, they reported there was a total projected deficit of $351 million. That's the 7.5% slump in tourism Las Vegas visitation. So they had $191 million shortfall in the state general fund and $160 million in the state education fund, which once again, they weren't funding education particularly high to begin with. Now, when you get that cut, it's really going to hurt. So how are they trying to get around it? Well, they're using some reserves to try and kind of, and rainy day funds to kind of do that. So they took 1.2 out of the rainy day fund. They took some money out of the education stabilization account, just the buffer. But if that number doesn't come back next year, they're in a whole lot of trouble, and there's a lot of people who wanted to address this because chances are 2026 isn't going to be as good. It might even be flat. They're not seeing the numbers in large numbers, both domestically and internationally. So, it's sort of an interest led, and the governor has basically said, no, we're not going to do anything to expand state spending or raise property tax. So once again, they're not doing anything. They're just, I can't see it. I can't hear it. It doesn't really exist. And they're trying to punt the pain down the line. But it's going to come because they're deferring everything. They're making any capital improvement projects, anything like that has been sort of put to the side. And as we see, this is going to affect even more because what happens is when the tourism dollars go down, this is the direct effect, this 351 million. But what happens is when people get laid off, they're not spending. So you're not getting any sales tax. You're not getting any fees. All these types of things that you would get from the residents, even in terms of revenues. You got a whole lot of people who can't afford their property tax anymore. Well, if you can't afford your property tax, you can't pay it. So what's the state going to do at this point? That's less money coming in. So basically, this kind of gets into a problem. When you have no state income tax, basically they have a bit of a payroll tax, but once again, if people start getting laid off, the payroll tax goes down because the amount of money being paid to employees as part of that payroll tax then gets dropped. The commerce tax on gross receipts, once again, that goes down. And then they have the fragility of the flat tourism. And the thing about it is what's not even included here is now online gaming. Online gaming is a big deal to them as well, because a lot of the gambling revenue were people having to go to Vegas to gamble, but now they have these online gaming things. I don't have to go to Vegas to gamble. I can just do it right from my phone. So once again, they're losing that gambling revenue as a result as well. So the idea is, under the Constitution, they can't do anything about income tax. They would have to make a constitutional change to do it, but the deficits is going to be, it's going to hurt. You're going to see boosting of local sales taxes. You're going to see raising of property taxes. You're going to see, and these are all regressive tax measures that are going to hurt the lower and middle class first before the rich people. So this is a thing that really kind of, the system, it looks good on paper to pay no income tax, but when you get into a model like this where you're expecting all this export money to pay for everything, what happens when that drops? You have no model to go back, and all your mechanisms are really going to hurt the poor and the middle class people in your communities as a result. So we're seeing the consequences. There's an education funding gap. There's a regressive tax trap. There's an infrastructure construction delays and a declining civic services. All of these things are affected because they live off the tourism tax dollars. See, the thing about tourism taxes, they're really, really good. So when you get these monies, export monies coming into an economy and pumping up the economy, it's a good thing. But what happens is if you get too greedy and you start living off of them, what happens when there's something that's going to downturn the market? You're looking at a COVID. You're looking at all kinds of things. You're looking at a Trump. Let's face it. He's doing everything possible to make it difficult. What happens if the economy turns south and you have a bunch of people from California and Arizona who can't afford to come anymore, right? You start looking at all these things and you realize, importance of tourism taxes. So I just wanted to make sure that as we're talking here, you're seeing what we're really talking about here in terms of yes, tourism drives a lot of taxes, but if it's the main part of your tax revenues, you're at a lot of risk in doing so.
So I think in my 14 months of having this channel, I've only had maybe 2 or 3 reports that do talk about the tourism tax. Most of the reports I do, they talk about small businesses or big businesses that are losing money. But there's never really any reports on what the city or the state is losing. And in Nevada's case, they're losing a lot more than just the souvenir shops or the restaurants or the bars that we used to go to. They might be losing out on education programs or city projects that were planned. If you ask me, tax revenue is kind of something that goes under the radar. Because, it's not as impactful as like a restaurant or a business closing down. But I think Wayne's video is a good reminder that for every dollar that we're not spending, it's not just the businesses that aren't getting it. In Las Vegas's case, the city and state are not getting our hotel room tax, sales tax, car rental and airport tax, alcohol tax, gasoline, and whatever other taxes they collect from us. So it's always good to keep this in mind whenever we see comments like this, saying that they don't need Canada anymore. Alright, you guys can go ahead and pay your own taxes, and have fun losing your city-funded programs. To close off this video, I would like to thank Jonathan G. from our Discord server for taking this photo from the Klondike Highway in the Yukon. I really appreciate everyone sending photos over of areas that are not on the current map. So thank you again, Jonathan, for posting this. And if you're new to my channel and you're not sure what this map is, one of our viewers named Belgian and Curious has actually plotted every single backdrop that I've used on my videos and put it into a map. So if you want to see the map for yourself and the actual pins, I'll leave a link in the description below. And thank you again, Belgian and Curious, for helping out the channel. Alright, that's it for this video, and thank you again, Professor Wayne Smith, for helping me out. If you found any value in anything that Wayne said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian and international perspective, without the US media bias, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. That way you'll be notified of my future videos. And don't forget to hit the bell icon and select all as well. Now, if you want to see more of my videos, check out the ones that are going to show up on your screen shortly. Thanks everyone, I'll catch you in the next one.